Imagine for a second that you are organizing a funeral for someone you deeply loved.
Right.
You spend, I don't know, $10,000 in a polished casket. You commission this enormous, breathtaking arrangement of lilies.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. You hire a caterer, you put up a beautiful bronze plaque, and you meticulously plan every single detail of the memorial.
Mm-hmm.
But then, years later, you realize that the one thing the deceased actually desperately needed from you was, well, completely invisible. It cost absolutely nothing. And you entirely forgot to get it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a devastating thought.
Yeah.
And yet, according to the centuries-old theology we are examining today, it's a scenario that plays out thousands of times a day all over the world.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Our source material today is a rather intense, really eye-opening document titled The Cry from Purgatory, Why We Have Forgotten the Church's Most Vulnerable Souls.
It's quite a read.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to unpack the religious concepts and the historical traditions that are outlined in this text regarding what are known as the holy souls in purgatory.
Right.
Now, before we really get going, I want to be crystal clear with you, the listener. Our purpose in this deep dive is to impartially explore the frameworks contained in this source material.
Exactly. We aren't here to endorse these theological claims, or to preach a specific religious viewpoint.
Right, no sides being taken here. Rather, we are acting as your guides to help you understand the mechanics, the psychology, and the genuinely fascinating beliefs presented in this text.
And it is a theological system that requires us to completely step outside of our modern assumptions about death. It asks us to view the afterlife not just as a final destination, but as an active, ongoing ecosystem.
Okay, let's unpack this. We live in a world that is frankly obsessed with immediate comfort and instant results.
Oh, absolutely.
If a package is delayed, we completely lose our minds. If a video buffers for like 3 seconds, we scroll past it.
Yeah, we have zero patience.
None. And according to this text, that modern obsession with the instant, it bleeds directly into how we process grief.
It really does.
Think about the last funeral you attended.
Yeah.
The immediate reflex is to say, they're in a better place now, or they are resting in peace. We just want to assume they instantly arrived in heaven.
Right, and the text describes that exact modern assumption as a quiet tragedy.
A quiet tragedy.
Yeah, because by assuming our loved ones are instantly in heaven, enjoying eternal paradise, we might be completely ignoring their actual agonizing reality.
Oh.
According to this theological framework, these souls are assured of their salvation like they are definitely going to heaven eventually, but they are not there yet.
Okay.
First, they must endure a holy cleansing fire to purify them of their earthly attachments, their unresolved flaws, and the lingering effects of their sins.
Yeah, that paints a very different picture than resting on a fluffy cloud.
It definitely does.
But hold on, if they're already saved, if their ticket to heaven is already punched, so to speak, why do they have to go through this cleansing fire?
Right, it's a common question.
Why doesn't this theology just have them walk through the pearly gates right away?
Well, it comes down to this framework's understanding of pure holiness. The text explains that nothing imperfect can enter the direct presence of God.
Okay.
It's not about God being vindictive. It's about the sheer intensity of divine perfection. If you've spent a lifetime accumulating, selfish habits, tiny resentments, or minor failings, your soul is basically covered in earthly soot.
Earthly soot. That's a vivid image.
Yeah, and the fire of purgatory is presented not as a torture chamber, but as a burning hospital. It is a necessary purification.
I see.
But here is the crux of their tragedy and why it's so urgent. These souls are straining toward God with an intensity we can barely comprehend, yet they are completely paralyzed. They cannot speed up their own purification.
So they're essentially frozen outside of time.
Precisely. Because they have crossed over into eternity, their time for making earthly choices, their time for generating what the text calls spiritual merit, is over.
Right.
They are entirely dependent on the outside intervention of the living who still exist within time and space.
I have to admit that feels like a lot of pressure on the living.
It is a massive responsibility.
Which leads us to the mechanism the text introduces for how we actually intervene. The document calls it a spiritual economy.
Yes.
But let me push back for a second, because calling it an economy almost sounds uncomfortably transactional, doesn't it? Like, are we just swiping a spiritual credit card to bail these souls out?
I understand why it sounds that way to modern ears, for sure. But the text frames it much more profoundly.
Yeah.
It isn't a crude transaction. It is an economy of grace. What's fascinating here is how the mechanics of this system actually bind the living and the dead together.
So,
Well, the holy souls are not just passive charity cases standing with their hands out. Once they actually reach their heavenly reward, they become incredibly powerful advocates for the exact people who helped them get there.
oh, wow. Actually, there is a quote in the text from Saint John Vianney that spells out this exact dynamic. Let me find it.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
Here it is. He says, "If it were but known how great is the power of the good souls in purgatory with the heart of God, and if we knew all the graces we can obtain through their intercession, they would not be so much forgotten."
Right.
And he finishes with, "We must therefore pray much for them, that they may pray much for us."
Notice the phrasing there, that they may pray much for us.
Yeah.
It highlights that they have zero agency over their own condition, but immense power regarding ours. Our earthly prayers and sacrifices, however small, carry massive weight before God on their behalf, because we still have the freedom to choose to offer them.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think of it like a spiritual trust fund.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, these souls possess immense future capital, which is their eventual proximity and power with God in heaven. But right now, their accounts are completely frozen.
Exactly.
Can't access a single cent to bail themselves out of the cleansing fire. We, the living, hold the unique key to unfreezing those assets.
Spot on.
So through tiny everyday sacrifices, we pay down their spiritual debt. And in return, they unlock that massive spiritual capital on our behalf once they are freed.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. You are leveraging your current temporal agency to unlock their eternal heavenly agency.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a deeply interconnected ecosystem. The living and the dead are not severed from one another by the grave.
Yeah.
And the chilling part of this theology is the opportunity cost. When we neglect to pray for the dead, it's not just a tragedy for the souls who are left waiting in the fire. We, the living, actively deprive ourselves of powerful heavenly advocates because we simply couldn't be bothered to remember them.
So if this spiritual trust fund is real, and the living get such a massive return on investment from helping these souls, why on earth is it being so completely ignored?
Well, the document lays the blame squarely at the feet of modern materialism. We have become hyper-focused on the physical, visible aspects of mourning at the total expense of the invisible, spiritual needs of the departed.
We want things we can see.
Exactly. We want something we can see, touch, and photograph to prove we care.
The text pulls a quote from St. Francis de Sales that, honestly, it stopped me in my tracks.
I know the one you mean.
He lamented how quickly the living abandon the memory of the dead, saying, "Alas, we do not sufficiently remember our dear departed. Their memory seems to perish with the sounds of the funeral bells."
Perishes with the sounds of the funeral bells. It is such a haunting image. The bells stop ringing, the guests go to the reception, life resumes, and the soul is left entirely alone in their purification.
You know, reading that made me think about the modern equivalent of those funeral bells.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
Today it's social media. When someone passes away, their page is just flooded with tributes, photos, and long emotional paragraphs.
Right. Everyone posts about it.
Yeah. But give it 2 weeks, maybe a month, and the timeline goes completely silent. Everyone moves on. The digital funeral bells stop ringing.
That is a perfect modern parallel. The text challenges you, the listener, to look at those cultural norms around death and realize how hollow they might actually be.
Yeah.
We spend exorbitant amounts of money on ornate caskets that will just sit in the dirt. We buy massive floral arrangements that wilt in a week. But we completely forget the free, invisible acts of prayer that, according to this text, are the only things that actually matter to the departed.
It's tragic when you frame it that way.
We offer them decaying aesthetics when what they desperately need is a lifeline.
The contrast is jarring. The text emphasizes that what the departed actually desire is strikingly simple. They don't want the thousands of dollars in orchids.
No.
They want a mass offered for their soul. They want a rosary. They want a heartfelt prayer from someone they loved.
There is a remarkably poignant quote from St. Margaret Mary Alacoque that backs this up. She says, "If only you knew with what great longing these holy souls yearn for relief from their suffering. Ingratitude has never entered heaven."
Wow. Ingratitude has never entered heaven. That implies that the gratitude they feel for being rescued isn't just a polite thank you. It is an eternal bond.
It does, and it highlights the immense psychological weight of this theology. I mean, Imagine the absolute agony of being forgotten by the very people you loved most in the world.
Right.
The children you raised, the spouse you provided for, the friends who promised they would always have your back. You are enduring this intense purification, unable to help yourself, waiting for them to throw you a rope, and they are busy admiring the expensive headstone they bought for you.
It is so heavy.
True care in this tradition isn't about maintaining a pristine, weed-free gravesite. It's about actively working for their spiritual release.
So if the lavish funeral and the beautiful flowers aren't actually helping the soul, what does? Because the text doesn't just leave us with this heavy guilt trip about forgetting the dead.
No, thankfully it doesn't.
Right. It pivots to a very specific, actionable rescue mission.
It frames praying for these souls not as some optional extra credit pious habit for the extremely religious. It frames it as a fundamental duty of supernatural charity.
It is a literal rescue mission of mercy.
Exactly.
And the ultimate reward for this rescue mission is beautifully illustrated by Venerable Fulton Sheen. He described what it will be like for someone who makes a habit of this when they finally enter eternity themselves.
Oh, this is a beautiful part.
He said, as we enter heaven, we will see them, so many of them, coming towards us and thanking us. We will ask who they are, and they will say, a poor soul you prayed for in purgatory.
The visual is stunning. The idea that your simple, hidden daily habits on earth literally populate your welcoming committee in the afterlife.
So how do we actually execute this rescue mission? Because the text lays out 4 very specific, actionable steps to answer this cry for help.
Right, let's go through them.
Number 1 is to offer a mass. But not just any mass specifically, to have a mass said for the most forgotten soul in purgatory.
Yeah.
The one who has literally no one else left on earth to pray for them.
That is a profound act of spiritual adoption. You are taking on a soul who has been abandoned by history, perhaps someone whose family line died out centuries ago, and you are stepping into the gap as their sole advocate.
That's amazing. Step 2 is to pray the Rosary, and the text explicitly notes doing this especially in Latin.
Yes, it makes a strong point about that.
It states that the Blessed Virgin Mary is the Queen of Purgatory, and she brings relief to these souls. But I have to stop you there.
Sure.
Why Latin? I mean, we live in the 21st century. God understands English, doesn't he? Does the language actually change the efficacy of the prayer in this theology?
It is a great question. The text explains that the emphasis on Ecclesiastical Latin isn't about God needing a translation.
Right, that would be silly.
Exactly. Latin is the universal, unchanging language of the Church. When you pray in Latin, you are uniting your personal, modern voice with centuries of deep tradition.
Oh, I see.
You are stepping out of the mundane, everyday language of text messages and emails and entering a sacred linguistic space. It creates a highly focused devotion that aligns your mind with millions of believers who have prayed those exact syllables throughout history.
That makes a lot of sense. The text even provides the traditional Latin prayer for the dead that you can use to close your rosary.
Do you have it there?
I do. I'll read it here and then give the translation. It goes, Requiem aeternam dona Domine et lux perpetua luceat requiescent in pace. Amen.
Beautiful.
Which translates to, eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen.
It's a very ancient, grounding rhythm.
It really is. Okay, moving on to step 3, the document introduces a very specific devotion, the St. Gertrude prayer. According to the text, Jesus actually promised St. Gertrude that this specific prayer would release many souls from purgatory every single time it is devoutly prayed.
It shows the immense power attributed to specific formulas of intercession in this tradition. It isn't just about, vague good wishes. It is about deploying specific, spiritually potent tools.
The prayer itself is incredibly sweeping in its scope. I'll read it now. It says, Eternal Father, I offer thee the most precious blood of thy divine Son, Jesus, in union with the masses said throughout the world today, for all the holy souls in purgatory, for sinners everywhere, for sinners in the universal church, those in my own home and within my family. Amen.
If you look closely at the architecture of that prayer, notice how it ripples outward and then inward.
What do you mean?
Well, it starts with the souls in purgatory, expands to sinners everywhere, encompasses the universal church, and then zooms all the way back into the speaker's own living room, their own home and family.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't catch that at first.
It is a prayer that covers the entire spiritual ecosystem, past, present, and future.
And finally, we have step 4, visit a cemetery. The text suggests offering a brief prayer for the dead while walking through a local graveyard, with a special emphasis on praying for those whose graves are untended, overgrown, or entirely forgotten.
This one is very tangible.
It is. But again, a skeptic might ask, if the soul is in purgatory and not physically in the dirt, why does visiting the actual cemetery matter?
Because this theology is deeply incarnational. It values the physical body.
Right.
By putting your feet on the ground where the dead are actually laid, you are acknowledging their physical remains, the bodies that will eventually be resurrected, according to this belief, while simultaneously praying for their invisible spiritual release. It grounds a highly mystical theology in tangible physical reality.
So what does this all mean? I wanted to do a quick thought experiment with you, the listener.
Let's do it.
Imagine you are walking through your local graveyard on a random Tuesday afternoon. You walk right past the shiny new headstones with the fresh flowers, and you head to the very back corner of the property. You find the oldest, most overgrown, weather-beaten headstone there. It belongs to someone who died in, say, 1840.
Long forgotten.
Exactly. Someone who hasn't had a single visitor in over a century. Their family line is entirely gone. Their house has been torn down. Within the framework of this text, if that soul is still in purgatory, they are completely paralyzed in that cleansing fire.
Yeah.
And in that quiet moment in the graveyard, you, a total stranger living centuries later, become their sole exclusive lifeline to paradise. You hold their eternity in your hands just by stopping to say a few words.
This raises an important question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Restoring this ancient devotion doesn't actually require complex mystical rituals. It just requires fidelity. It demands that you, as the listener, transition from being a passive mourner, someone who just stands by and watches death happen, offering empty platitudes, into an active rescuer.
I love that. Active rescuer.
The text quotes St. Padre Pio, who aggressively exhorted believers with a massive call to action. He said, "We must empty purgatory with our prayers." It is a militant, urgent call to spiritual arms.
Empty purgatory. I absolutely love the boldness of that phrasing.
It's very striking.
It really is. It takes something that usually makes us feel entirely helpless, the death of a loved one, and turns it into an incredibly proactive mission. We don't have to just sit around and be sad. We have a job to do.
It gives purpose to grief. Instead of your grief just being a static, heavy weight, it becomes the fuel for intercession.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by looking at our modern cultural blind spot, how our desperate desire for immediate comfort leads us to assume our loved ones skip straight to heaven, totally ignoring the theological reality of the cleansing fire.
Right, and we unpacked the immense tragedy of the forgotten souls, examining the deep pain they experience when we prioritize wilting flowers and social media posts over eternal prayers. We looked at the spiritual economy of grace and how the living and the dead are fundamentally codependent.
And finally, we walked through the highly specific, actionable rescue mission, offering a Mass for the abandoned, praying the Latin Rosary with the ancient Requiem aeternam, employing the sweeping St. Gertrude prayer, and the physical grounding act of visiting forgotten graves.
Yes.
It's a profound look at a tradition that tightly binds the living and the dead, giving the living an incredible, almost intimidating amount of agency.
Agency truly is the perfect word for it. And before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on everything we've just discussed regarding that agency.
Okay, what is it?
Well, the text heavily emphasizes that these souls in purgatory, despite being completely assured of their salvation and destined for heaven, are utterly powerless to shorten their own purification. They rely entirely on the living.
Right.
So think about this. If our small, everyday, earthly sacrifices have the absolute power to alter the eternal state of a soul, does that mean our ordinary, messy, mortal lives actually possess more immediate spiritual potency than the state of those who have already crossed over? It completely flips our usual perspective on its head. We tend to view the afterlife as the place of ultimate power and completion. But perhaps, according to the mechanics of the spiritual economy, true, actionable spiritual power isn't just found in eternity.
Yeah.
Perhaps it is found exclusively in the fleeting, messy living moments we have right now.
A completely flipped perspective. The way we view life, death, and where the real power lies might just be upside down after all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now so you won't miss future shows.